everybody. For tonight's video, I thought we could sit back and do some Reddit scary stories. Now these have been highly requested recently, so I thought I would just sit down and do some of the ones that actually seemed pretty good to me. So without further ado, we'll just get right in. This first one is, whatever that thing is, it is not my dog. For context, my dog is a 7-year-old German Shepherd named Duke. Duke is a brave dog who will stand his ground and not fear anything. This is the type of dog you wouldn't screw with either. He is a big dog, the type you'd see and assume that he'd kill you. My other dog, Charlie, we only let out in our pen. We built a pen specifically for our dogs. Whereas my other dog, Duke, is allowed in and out of the yard, as he is trained and won't run off. Charlie is a husky. He and Duke always get along. They never fight aside from playing, of course. They always are close and love each other. One day we let our dog Bruno out, and he runs across the street. This is uncommon, but has happened before. We are surrounded by forest and have a long driveway, so once he is on the driveway, he is out of our sight. As usual, my dad goes across the street. He told me at this moment he knew something was up. He said he had a lifeless expression in a dog who is always smiling or showing some emotion. But what we both noticed was weird was the fact that Charlie seemed to avoid him like he was scared. Keep in mind, these are the dogs who usually spend all day together. Duke seemed to have gone from a happy, brave dog to a lifeless dog who avoided people. This point is where we knew this wasn't Duke. Out of nowhere, we were here whimpering outside in the pen. We go to check it out and see Charlie bleeding a few feet away from Duke inside the pen, with blood in his mouth. We pull Charlie inside and lock Duke out. My dad said to me, "You saw that too, right?" I nod my head. What the hell has gotten into him? My dad says. I tell him to look out the window onto the driveway where we see Duke, scared and whimpering. Then look back out to the pen and see Duke standing on his hind legs, his eyes all black, staring at us. I'm a fan of these quicker, very short stories, and while the ones that get me are the ones that are believable. I do believe that there is a potential for things that we don't understand or we don't know that's out there. And there's some stories that, like ghost stories and stuff like that, that absolutely I could 100% believe. This one isn't believable to me, but I know a lot of people love the skinwalker sort of thing. And to be honest, I have a dog myself, and the thought of typically we go out with her anytime she needs to use the bathroom or anything, or just wants to go play. But that is always a thought in the back of my mind, is the dog we let out, is that the same dog that's coming back in, so to speak. So, on to the next one here. I saw a ghost. Years ago, I had the following experience. I and my boyfriend at the time had watched a film, and he said, "I'll take it back to the rental place," which was down the road from my house. It was late afternoon, and my parents were home. While he was returning the rental film, I was waiting in the porch, and looked at the house across the road, where a boy had lived, who died in a car accident a month before. The boy had been about 14 when he died. I was looking into the house and thinking about him when I saw a figure appear slowly in the front window of the house. I could see a figure wearing a blue jacket, jeans, and could see a head but no facial features. Just a pink, kind of molten face. Then the figure began to vibrate side to side, which was fairly frightening to me. I was, of course, shocked and scared. I turned back into the house, and my mom said, "What's the matter?" I told her I saw something strange, and told my boyfriend also. I don't think they believe me, but I saw it for sure. I feel still to this day amazed and in awe of what I saw. Feel honored, really, to have witnessed it. I've only told 5 people this, as I felt people would think I was strange. I was about 20 years old at the time, now 48, and still remember it clear as day. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there is a lot of stories out there about, like old, decrepit buildings and them having ghosts attached to them. And I feel like there is so many of those stories out there that, while I can't say for certain, I definitely believe that some of them could definitely be true. And the thought that this boy could still potentially be at this house as a spirit, that kind of stuff freaks me out, I'm not gonna lie. And I definitely believe them on some level, that they could be happening. The ghost of my grandma. This all took place when I lived in my old apartment when I was 11. To start off, one of my aunts who lived in New York drove to drop off my grandmother's ashes from when we lived there prior. I can't say I felt uneasy with having her ashes around. I actually didn't think much of it. Later that night, I was making hot chocolate for me and my sister. I had 2 cups sitting on the table while I was pouring the hot water into the first cup. The other one started to shake and move. I didn't think much of it because I thought that it was the bit of water I spilled on the table, so once I grabbed that cup, the other one filled with water started to move too. This is when I started to get uneasy. That was only the first encounter. The second one is when that freaked me out the most. Me and my sister were in my mom's room while she was at work. My sister got up to take a shower, which is right next to my mom's room. I got a bit of chills being alone, but I went to get some water on my way back to the room. I walked closely to the door before a very gray and brown, distorted face slammed the door. I got so scared I shook for a moment. For some reason, I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, fearing someone was actually in the room. I broke into the room with the knife, looked around as fast as I could, but no one was there. I couldn't tell if my mind was playing tricks on me, but it definitely felt like it. Anytime I tell someone this story, they assume it was the air in the room that caused the door, but it was slammed way too aggressively. But to this day, we still have her ashes, but nothing has happened since then, I guess. It was just the first couple of days of her being back, and she wanted to see me. Still thinking about it to this day gives me chills. Now, the reason I picked this story is actually because my grandfather, my mom's dad, he was cremated, and he still to this day is sitting in our closet. He was cremated, it's probably been 15 years now, and we've had him ever since. My mom doesn't really know what to do with him, but there's always weird stuff that happens at night, don't get me wrong. I don't, me personally, attribute them to ghosts or anything. But it definitely, growing up as a kid, knowing that stories like this exist, and knowing that your grandfather's ashes are in a closet down the hall from you, it definitely always did make people feel uneasy in the house, and it did make me a little scared growing up as a kid. Because anytime you hear a story like this, you can kind of relate to it a little bit. Hi, my name is Lars, and I used to be in the Boy Scouts. I was once in the park, which I don't quite remember the name of, but it is in Texas, and was located in the area called the Devil's Backbone. It was a week-long summer camp, and the park had set up little stations throughout it with things like archery and shotgun shooting. Well, once I decided to take the archery class again, which was quite a distance up this hill. I walked up at probably around 6 p.m. or so, and had finished the class by 8 p.m. There were others at the class, but from different groups, and when I left alone. I started making my way back down the stone and dirt staircase/pathway back to the camp when I heard someone following me. Like whatever it was mimicking my footsteps. I would turn around and the sound would stop. The trees were so dry and thin I could see all the way back up the hill in the moonlight. Also, it was said by the park officials that all of the wildlife had run off due to construction in the area. Anyway, I kept hearing this sound of someone following me, even though I was in the middle of nowhere, with no person for probably a good 200 feet away. I could see all the way up and all the way down the hill for yards and yards. No animals, no birds, no people, but I kept hearing and feeling this presence behind me. I was creeped out, but kept my cool and made it back to camp. The next night, I took the archery class again for fun, but this time with a friend, and unfortunately around the same time as the night before. This time we were walking back down, but my friend was in front of me. He then stopped and whispered to me, Lars. Lars. I was like, yeah, man. And it was at that moment I realized something really was going on. I just stopped. My friend was standing in front of me, and without turning around he whispered, who's that walking behind us? I spun around quick and said, John, there's no one behind us. He then turned around and looked up the hill the same way I did the night before. We then looked at each other and both hauled ass all the way down the hill, back to camp, like the two rolling down in the movie, The Rundown. We were running through the bushes in the moonlight, down a hill all the way back to camp. I have told this story many times to family and friends, and it was recently when my dad told me, you came across a phantom walker. I was listening to a podcast a while ago, and this man said that there are these extra-dimensional creatures who mimic people's walk, and who are called phantom walkers by people who live near wild parks. I did some research and can't find anything on phantom walkers. Does anyone know anything about this? Yes, I am aware it could have been a ghost, or ghost of a past Native American, but can people explain? Okay, so for this one, I have a few stories. As many of you know, I was in the Scouts, and I did make it all the way up to an Eagle Scout. From all of the camping trips we used to do a camping trip about once a month, and we even did some out in Philmont, which is out in New Mexico. We did some up in Northern Tier, which is in Minnesota. And I gotta say, there's always, creatures at night, little critters and deer. In Minnesota, we came across bear footprints through our camp one night while we were sleeping. There's always things out there. However, I definitely feel like there was certain, especially when we were in New Mexico for the Philmont trek, it's hard to explain, but there's definitely like eerie vibes at nighttime, and it definitely feels like I've had that before, where it feels like someone's watching you. Now, on the flip side of this, I'm not proud of what I'm about to say, but I did it. I can't really go back and change things. I do remember one camp out where we were all around. Basically, you broke up into patrols, and they were broken up by age. So all of us older scouts were in one patrol, the younger scouts, like middle schoolers, were in another. And one night we were doing land navigation. So we had a compass and we were going through the woods, and us older boys decided that it would be funny if we didn't do the land nav course, and instead we went around and scared the younger scouts. So we figured out where they were going, got ahead of them, and then just laid in the woods and just started making noises when they went by and really freaked them out. And I don't remember, but I don't believe we ever told them that it was us. So, while I definitely have felt that sort of eerie presence in the woods before, where you definitely feel like something's there, something's watching you, at the same time, especially at Boy Scouts, I can relate that, sometimes the older scouts are just cruel people. I'm sure when I was a younger scout, the same thing probably happened to me, especially if you're at a summer camp. But at the same time, I definitely understand that there's definitely some eerie feelings at nighttime when you're in the middle of the woods with no one around you. So long story, my family went on a trip to Wisconsin for some side-by-side off-roading. There is a trail that is only big enough for select off-road vehicles. The gate is small enough that no vehicles can enter it. We were able to get in on a smaller side-by-side and started the trail. About a mile the side-by-side I was in needed to stop and use the bathroom, so we fell about a mile behind the lead side-by-side. The driver of mine decided to try and hit a puddle. After we started driving again and ended up hitting a stump and flipping up, we were pretty stuff and half the side-by-side was nearly crushed, so we couldn't get out. So less than 5 seconds after we stopped rolling, these 3 random men in their 20s start pulling us out of the vehicle and helping us. The weird part is that they drove a 1980 Chevy Blazer, which is far too big to be able to get on this trail. Also, we did not see them behind us at all. This trail is surrounded by trees and every entrance is only big enough for small off-road vehicles. These 3 men helped us out. A few minutes went by and the 6 of us, 3 in the side-by-side and 3 of the random men, were working on flipping the side-by-side back over. That's when the other side-by-side got back and helped out. We took a few minutes to talk to each other, and by the time our focus shifted back to the 3 men, them and their vehicle were gone. We didn't hear a vehicle start, and everyone there at the time 100% saw them. Any ideas what this might have been? I can't figure it out, and it's still bugging me. Okay, so for this one, I've heard a lot of videos or stories like this, where essentially people claim that the theory is of guardian angels. They will come, they will help you, and then they will disappear. I've heard of, several instances like this, where people, they needed help with something, and no one was around, so someone kind of miraculously appeared. And in this story, especially since they're saying that the Chevy Blazer was too big to get onto the trail, and it just seems like they sort of materialized and left without a word. That it's very possible some guardian angels showed up, they helped them, and just kind of disappeared. Now, at the same time, I guess the flip side of this would be if you crashed and you might be kind of dazed, you might be kind of out of it without realizing you were out of it. So yes, someone could have pulled over and helped you and left, but you maybe weren't kind of 100% with it, so to speak. It's hard to tell, but at the same time, I've heard a lot of stories like this. I think the other one I heard was a woman who needed her tire changed. It was late at night and she was on the side of the road by herself. And she said something very similar happened where a man just kind of appeared, helped her change her tire, and then vanished. So, I subscribe to the whole, guardian angel thing. Maybe they were ghosts. I don't know. But it's definitely nice hearing a story where the ghosts aren't, or whatever they are, the entities aren't, they're not trying to be malicious or hurt you, they're actually trying to help. So that's always a nice thing. I guess I will end the video here today, guys. If you enjoyed the scary Reddit stories, or have other stories you want me to read, please let me know in the comments below. I can certainly keep making more of these. Now, if you prefer just for me to read the stories, this video I kind of did a little interpretation or a little commentary after the story was told. So if you like that style, I can keep that going. If you just want the stories, I can certainly do that as well. And if you have any other ideas, please let me know. And I guess I will see you all in the next video. Peace.